Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. I'm on the road this week, as you can probably tell from this luxurious hotel room setting behind me. But of course, joining me as always is my good buddy Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends. Yeah.
We're going to see if Tom's internet works again this week. Yeah, I mean, you came through. We'll see. We'll see how it works.
At least I'm
on
without
hotel
kids this
internet,
week.
and you're on your own crappy internet. So, we'll just see how this goes.
Could really
Might
go
be a
either way.
short show.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Sticking to that hour format we started with.
Yes. Remember the early days when we were a tight 60 minutes and we were out. Yeah, boy, that was a long time ago. It was a long time
Man,
ago.
my wife remembers that. She reminisces about it.
So Tom, let's start with the news. And yes, your internet still sucks.
Oh, that's fantastic. I cannot wait. Sorry, folks. This is the world we live in until I think it might be my router. So I apologize. Okay, so let's do some news. We have the rumor engine this week, which I thought was particularly interesting.
All right. Pause. We're just going to pause right here. We're not going through this again. You're going to turn your video off, and we're going to do it from there.
That's fantastic. There you go. Boom.
Okay. Now let's see if you actually can talk normal without being all jumpy. So let's try. All right, Tom. Now talk.
We have a rumor engine this week.
We do. The rumor engine looks like either an Iron Jaws or an Ogre weapon.
Right.
And
go. Actually, I'm going to vote for it being an Ogre weapon. That's where I want to put my money down. Originally, I was a staunch Iron Jaws individual proponent. But it was pointed out that both them and Ogres have the little, like, teeth, I guess, on the weapons is the best way to describe it. But more importantly, at the base of this item is a little piece of wood. And the little piece of wood is very Ogre-esque. Let me share this real quick just so that we can, because I hate talking about something and then not actually being able to show it here. There you go. So you can see at the bottom down here, we have a piece of wood, and that's very reminiscent of Ogre weapons. I don't know, Vince, you painted a lot of Iron Jaw stuff. Do they ever have pieces of wood down near the hilt for Ogres?
I mean,
or for Iron
Jaws. For Iron Jaws, no, they have wrappings around it. So it's not exactly like that. There's no Iron Jaws things that look exactly like that. I saw somebody else guess that it's the spoke of a chariot. That's hopeful. That's not true. But it's clearly like some kind of spear is what it looks like to me, at least. I would love it if it was some ridiculous Ogre or Iron Jaws chariot, but it's not.
That would be pretty sweet, wouldn't it? Cool. So,
but yeah, I mean, like, if it is Iron Jaws, my hope would be the long dreamed of mega boss on Gore Grunta. That would be
how fantastic.
That would be the get. It'd be amazing. It would be amazing.
But yeah. What were you saying?
So, yep. But here we are. We'll see. We'll see what it is.
Other news, Warhammer Day, June 29th, we have the Battle Sister model. That's kind of exciting.
Yeah. That first Sister of Battle model, the one that they've been showing for a long time, will be available. It's not really an AoS related thing, but I put it in the news because, duh.
Sisters of Battle. Yep.
Right,
indeed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They did say that you will be able to get it elsewhere if you can't pick it up that day. Like, that they will have it available separately elsewhere, but that's just going to be the first chance to pick it up. So cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I'm going to get it or not. I mean, obviously you are. It's a non-starter. But yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I might pick it up. So they're a neat looking set of models, that's for sure. Other news. So the AoS Open Day is coming up 7/20. We had already talked about this. It aligns with Warcry. And it's also going to now be our first kind of event that is a meeting engagement tournament, which will be the next day on 7/21 at Warhammer World. We'll talk a little bit about meeting engagement details here in a minute, but this is going to be an exciting piece of news. Vince, what's your initial impressions on meeting engagements? Not getting into any of the details.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, seems cool. I'm down with it. Seems like an awesome way to. I like alternate play modes.
Sure.
I have been an advocate for a long time of the idea of tournaments using broken up game sizes. Like, I know that would be anathema to everybody's perfect world of these 2,000 point games so they can evenly compare stats or whatever. But I don't care. Because I think tournaments that have varying game sizes are actually real fun. I don't want to make a nightmare for LLV, but that's my answer. I think it'd still be cooler. It's worth it is my short answer. And I think these look really fun. I like the way they broke it up. I mean, it still seems like there could be certain abuses in it, but overall, good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about some of the restrictions, but a lot of I don't think it's curbing. What I'll say is this: I don't think it's curbing any current list design. I heard a lot of people trash talking how it's oh, it's going to fix the problem of X in 1K, and it is not going to do that, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But we'll come back to that. Other events coming up. Essex GT is happening here on July 6th and 7th. They've sold 50 tickets, but there's a handful remaining. It's going to be one of the first GHB 2019 events in the UK. And also the Mitzi and Jimbo show are going to be doing the event as well. So we'll have the link to that event in the comments below. So they're still selling some tickets for that event. So the big news this week, or some of the big news, let me say it that way, is the GHB 2019. A set of articles that have released this week. We've had the announcement of the pre-order that's coming this next Saturday, which is exciting. And the first of those, obviously, the meeting engagement details. And basically, as we've kind of alluded to, it's a 1,000 point alternate format style event where basically all of your armies are going to come in stages onto the battlefield. And each kind of adaptation or each scenario is going to have them maybe come in different parts of the battlefield or whatever. And it staggers. And we had talked about what this might look like. Do you remember this? Our prediction, Vince?
Yes, I do.
When we predicted it, one of the things that I noticed was that. Or one of the things that I had mentioned was that they might do minimum unit sizes. That's one way to quote fix 1K. And in fact, that's what they've done a modified version of that, where the stuff that goes down first turn has to be minimum unit size. The stuff that goes down second turn, any battle line units that come in can be double minimum unit size. And then in turn 3, anything can be double minimum unit size. And so there's this not turn 3, but the end of turn 2, the third deployment. And so it's just a real interesting way to kind of curtail some of the power lists at that level. So I'm excited to play it. I think it'll be fun. A lot of people are saying it's going to be the new competitive, hyper competitive format. I don't agree with that. I think it'll be interesting. I think that there's going to be some winners and losers in list design. And you're going to see that in this more than ever. It will become more obvious, some of those things. And as an aside, I dearly hope that Marathi gains the Behemoth keyword. Otherwise, she goes down turn 1 and then can teleport or transform and shoot across the board to greet their new troops that are arriving.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, even without that, you could still just bring in the classic 1K Nagash list. He just doesn't show up until the bottom of 1. Your board would be empty. during the first turn. So
Yep.
like I would be curious to see how the first turn objectives work. Like how important is it to
Right.
capture everything, you know, during the first turn? Because suddenly at the bottom of one, like Nagash, 2 units of 5 dire wolves and a corpse card all wander on to the board together, right? Like that's what would
Sure.
happen.
Sure.
And that's your entire 1K just came in as the force. Like that is my force.
Well, no. It says
So
that
unless they
every
have some
phase.
kind of extra restriction, you
No.
can walk all that on turn 1
No. It
or
says
bottom 1.
it says every phase. So each of the 3 deployments have to have 1 unit deployed. So it moves all lists to 4 drop minimum. So in each, so that you
Did it say in there that
it did.
everything has to have
It
something?
did. It said in the entry level description before it got to the chart, the stages, the bullet points, it said every phase has to have at least one deployment.
Okay, but everything can have a battle line, right?
Yes. Yeah. So like you could do like, so for example, the way you would do that is you would go dire wolves, Nagash and dire
Right.
wolves, and then corpse card at the end. It comes strolling on.
Or flip the wolves in the cart. Yeah, exactly. Like,
well,
yes.
there you go. Yeah, you could do something like that. Yep. But the only, so you have to have like any 1 unit in the first deployment, any 1 unit and 1 hero in the second deployment, any 1 battle line, sorry,
Right.
and any hero in the second deployment, and then any unit in the third deployment. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Right.
I like
the key is you could like wheel the card on first if you wanted. Alone, you've just got to have Nagash and 5 of the wolves in the second, at the bottom of 1. But yeah, sure, just back corner board the cart and hope nobody gets it, or the 5 wolves and hope nobody gets it, or whatever. But yes,
Yep.
You could do that.
Yep.
So there you go. Somebody said the format isn't even released and you're trying to break it. No, I mean, we're not trying to break it. We're just having discussions about funny lists that still occurred to me. Like I'm fascinated by the format. I'm not seeking to break anything. I'm always just interested. When you put other restrictions on me and say this is how you have to deploy, my brain immediately goes, okay, well, what could I still do? Right?
Yeah. I mean, like I had to laugh. Like my list that I took second at Acon with this year, my 1K list, I could still run that. Marathi and a group of witches go down, or a sister screen goes down turn 1. Deployment 1. Deployment 2 is a hag and 20 sisters or 20 witches. And then deployment 3 is your Canary. Or something along those lines.
Yeah, seems good to me.
It'll be interesting to see what the format looks like and how it works. And like I can think about like Iron Jaws. Iron Jaws would be a fun deployment where it's like 3 pigs in a Maw Crusher, 3 pigs.
Sure. A classic list. That's the type of Iron Jaws I like. Like just all pigs in a Maw Crusher. Sure, absolutely.
So anyways, so there's some neat stuff. It'll be fun to kind of explore and see what that format offers. It'll be a nice quick play format as well. Because I think because there won't be like multiple combats going on simultaneously, but that stuff will flow very quickly.
Yeah, I mean they're also recommending like a much smaller board, right?
Yes. Yep. Okay, what else? In addition to the meeting engagements that dropped this week, we had more information on mercenary companies. Do you have the list for which mercenary companies they talked about? Because they walk through them. I don't see it on the site for some reason. There they go. So yeah, we found out about the Necromancer bundle. So one of the interesting things that struck with the mercenary companies was that it seems like they're going to require like a constellation of units, kind of like battalions. And I thought that was a really interesting take that was just simply very different from what we saw of mercenary companies in Forbidden Power. Because the implication of this would be that you may need to take like 3 units, you know, like I think about the Lichmaster one, where it's like a skeleton, a corpse cart, and a necromancer. Like if you have to take 3, I don't know how they square that with it taking up like the ally spots, where you have to do 12, where you would have to have 12 units in order to deploy 3 allied units. And so it was just a very interesting kind of break from that other format. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're going to try this for a minute, by the way, because that was like, I could barely hear you. My internet was screwing up. So we're going to try it this way. See if it works.
Weird.
Okay. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, cool. So can you hear me now?
It's not you, by the way. It's definitely me, because everybody in the audience, I checked and they all said they can hear you fine, Tom. So you just keep talking, buddy. You're doing fine.
Okay. So so obviously the interesting difference is that the mercenary companies,
I can hear you just fine. You keep going.
Seem to function just a little bit differently. We have the Sons of the Lichmaster. We have the Grug brothers, which are up to 3 of the Giants, which obviously will make Vince very happy. The Vampire Lord on Nightmare Steed with some Blood Knights is kind of exciting. It's interesting that they are calling these formations rather than like, because they're operating, like I said, a little bit closer to battalions than actually to what we saw of the mercenary companies in Forbidden Power. We have some Free Guild riders, which is exciting. And then obviously everybody gets some cannons and some guns with the mercenary, the Black Smoke battery. So and then some miscellaneous chaos monsters, some marauders, and some ogres. So a surprising kind of dearth of order stuff that I would expect. I would have expected the Corsair Pirates. That seems like really low hanging fruit, and instead they went for like some free company and some cannons. So I guess maybe it seems like they may be thinking about battlefield roles and trying to fill some of the battlefield roles. I like the kind of the tighter narrative bundle that's the Necromancer group, but overall I think it's interesting. So Vince, are you there? It's fascinating. Vince just apparently he's not with us anymore, and so you guys are gonna watch 2 bouncing bubbles.
I'm here, but like I get like every other word you say, so it's hard for me to know what you're saying. Hopefully you can still hear me okay.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine when you talk. And then
I think you can come on. You can turn your camera back on. I think it's all my internet, Tom. I think your internet's fine today.
Is it? So it's not my fault. Now everybody has to look at me. I apologize, folks. This is just the world we're in today. So man, 2 bad weeks in a row. There's a news story for you. In addition, we got a new set of stuff for the GHB today for cool narrative fluff. You know, I don't want to say fluff, but like cool narrative, like engagements, like Streets of Death, arcane objectives, and then like the reintroduction of Regiments of Renown. So those are some neat things that are coming. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited for some of the formats and stuff like that. There's been some other rumblings that we've heard that have kind of that are on the interwebs. One of those is that we have 3 new command abilities coming in the GHB. Again, these aren't in the preview articles yet, but stuff that we've heard. This hasn't been fully confirmed yet, but we feel like it's probably pretty accurate. There are 3 new. Did I just cut out? Okay. There are 3 new command abilities. We don't know the extent of them, if it's phase dependent. We don't know what the range is, but basically they boil down to reroll hits of 1, reroll hits of 1, reroll wound rolls of 1, and reroll saves of 1. We've heard that. We've also heard that there's a max on command points. such that like you can only buy up to 1 for 50 points. So you can't like buy like 3 command points at the start of the game. So it'll probably prevent a lot of the alpha striking that we were seeing. The command point dumping that we were seeing happening at the beginning of some games. We don't know if that restriction is going to show up on battalions or not. But there's little pieces of bits and information leaking out. We've heard that the point adjustments are smaller increments. So you're seeing a lot more like 10-point adjustments, where before most of it was a 20-point adjustment. So that's another interesting piece of data that's kind of popped up. So lots of interesting stuff in the new pointing that's going on. So Vince, do you want to talk about your Olympia class that's coming up now that you're back with us? The delay.
Am I? I don't know, man. We'll see. Sure, we'll give it a shot. You still have 1 more week, and I still have a couple more slots left. Teaching a class in Olympia. I'm sure you should take the lead on most of this and keep talking. But teaching a class in Olympia, Washington, 2-day class. It's the heavy metal class with the Imperial Knights. It's going to be. You can find the link in the description. I'll keep messing around, Tom, here. You keep talking.
I'm so excited that this is not my problem this week. I mean, it is my problem. You are my problem, but the audio is not my problem. Okay, other news. I think that's the extent of our news. Let's go to pick of the week and hobby time. For our pick of the week, I'm just going to promote a conversation that's been floating around. Hey Whoa Twitch, friend of the show, kicked it off with the tiering chart that he shared on Twitter that there was a big dust up on, and then it progressed to AoS Shorts talking about doing something a little bit more formally, and then Rob did a show on it this week about doing tiering based on the statistics and based on just the raw numbers that we've had from AoS 2.2. So that was a very exciting, it was an enjoyable show. It was about an hour long, and he just talks about where all of the tiers, all of the armies kind of sit based on their performances, like if you were to break them into tiers. And so I felt like that was helpful. That should not be understood as like dictum. That's not something that is to say that like you can't do better or worse in those tiers, or that like it's not like some armies always lose to lower or like higher tier armies, or there's nothing like that. But it's just a general guideline if you're trying to get an idea of where something sits in the current world, so that you don't buy it expecting to like own all your games and then find out you're playing dispossessed. So that's.
How about now, by the way? Can you hear me okay? Am I coming through?
Yeah,
all
I can
right?
hear you a lot better.
There
Good.
we go. We fixed it. Okay, we have a show here, folks. All right, let's do this.
Well, welcome back, Vince. I'm glad that you could join us.
Thanks, man.
I was doing my pick of the week, talking about the tiering, all of the tiering stuff that's dropped this last week between like charts and posts and videos and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a good pick. It's a hot pick.
Go ahead.
All right.
You tell us your pick.
Sure. So my pick is going to be actually for an Instagram account. That's actually going to be a weird thing, but I'm going to link Richard Gray, who I hope everybody knows and I hope everybody already follows. I'm going to link his Instagram down below. He's been doing some awesome experimentation with contrast paints. I know it's like the hottest thing. Everybody wants to know all about them. So
Sure.
I don't have any yet. I'll have some whenever they come out and are available to the public. But obviously Richard was, he had gotten a set early, and he's, again, like one of the most amazing artists in the world, and he's doing a lot of cool stuff. So I'll link his Instagram down there. You should be following it anyways if you're on Instagram and you like miniatures. And so go watch that, or go look at that, and you can see all the neat stuff he's done with it. He's done like a troll and a space marine and a bunch of really, really cool stuff. So you should absolutely check that out. There you go.
Maybe you'll grow up one day, Vince, and be invited to the cool kid painting club events.
I'm okay if I'm not. Thank you. I'm good enough. I'm fine. It's okay. Just fine.
Okay. Well, hobby time. What have you been working on, Vince?
Oh man, so much. So yeah, actually, like a legit a lot. Other than the fact that I've had to spend this week with the very frustrating time of traveling to Europe, so that hence why I'm over here, and why we're doing the show at this time. But the I've been working on my big sort of, let's call it, secret project. It's not, but the one that you saw the Bloodthirster for. I got the Bloodthirster to, let's call it, like final draft state, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like I got him done with, kind of the first pass where I'm like, trying to get feedback on him and stuff like that. And then there's other stuff ready to go that I was also prepping. I also painted 2 pieces of terrain, one of which was a video.
What?
I know. What is going on there?
What?
I painted up that big, because I had gotten some of the temple set or whatever,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so I painted
That
that up.
stuff is huge.
Yeah, well, it's super fast to paint. It's not complicated, and it's like one piece. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing. You get it out of just one giant piece. You glue a couple pillars onto it. Mine's actually a little different because I had to cut a big chunk out of it for reasons that will become apparent later for a different project. Okay. So
Sure.
like it comes as one big piece, and I just took a Dremel and like hacked this giant
And you're like,
chunk out of it.
I want this piece.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll see, because of course, I mean, Tom, what did I hack a big chunk out of the temple for? What was I doing? Why did I take that out?
Probably for a base or a diorama.
Exactly, for a base. Do we even have to ask? Of course it was for a base. So like I had this idea of what I wanted for this base before they released the temple set. And then
Sure.
when they released the temple set, I was like, oh, well, that just worked out too well, because it was like exactly what I wanted. Don't worry. Yes, Anthony's in the chat, and he said he was sad because I didn't paint his terrain. Dude, I've got your terrain queued up. It's going to be an amazing display board. Just hold your crazy horses. But at any rate, so I needed to replace. So I've got this big chunk missing out of it, right? And
Yep.
I'll share a picture tonight after the show. I'll tweet out the picture tonight after the show. But I needed to replace that. So I put in, you know how we've done lava, like how we did lava on your board, right?
Yeah.
So I put in like that same trick
Yep.
to add lava into a void empty space and let it dry, and then painted it over like it had been hit by like a comet or something. And then it was just cooling. So there's like little bits of heat left underneath. Like I looked up pictures of like cooling magma, and that's what I tried to make it look like. So it's the temple, but it looks like either a Bloodthirster came up and hit it with like a fiery axe, or the comet from Stormcast crashed into it, or something like that, because it's got this big giant burnt chunk out of it. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. So when I get back, it'll be time to work on more of the big project. That's going to be, another couple weeks at least of work. But that's fine. It takes the amount of time it takes. I have little tiny projects that I do sort of in between if I need a break. Like one, I just keep it. That's what the terrain was. The terrain was like okay, I've spent 60 hours painting this one thing. I've got to stop my brain from exploding. So let me just go ahead and, start smashing a giant dry brush into this terrain thing, right? Because you don't have to paint it carefully. It's just slapping down pigment and washes and paint and stippling and dry brushes and blah, 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 blah. It's just fun painting, right? So there you go.
Yep. It's so funny that you say that, because like I've been working on Fire Slayers this week, and in between freehanding, like I've jumped to like endless spells and jumped to like the terrain, because I'm like, okay, I've done enough freehand. I need to go do this other thing. And then I was like, oh no, this needs freehand too. And so like I've moved in between a bunch of different Fire Slayer projects this week. See if I can pull up some of those. I'm working on my rune wall. So that's been fun to kind of play around with. And because it's not like, it's a very challenging piece to paint for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which because it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the cracks on the model, where like the two pieces on the model are super obvious, like it's maybe a little bit harder to see here, but like where the wall connects to the base is like a very ugly seam, like an outrageously ugly seam. And even using plastic glue and like melting it together, it was pretty terrible. And so what I ended up doing was I did freehand like along the base of the wall. Like a lot of these rocks are freehand down here, in order to help kind of blend and create some visual confusion to make the seam go away. Because it's terrible. So
no, good plan. Yeah, absolutely. I have used seam lines as part of a model before if I can place it. So famously, like, you remember the Reaper Bones Cloud Giant female?
Yeah. Yep.
She has like this horrible seam line across the top of her head. Okay. And she has like two little crowny pieces on the side. I couldn't get it shaved down, so I actually just built it up and made it like part of her crown connecting the two pieces. Like, sometimes you got to get creative with seam lines, man.
Like, it's the worst. And so I've been working on that, and then I've been working on a bunch of Hearthguard Berserkers. You can see the freehand starting in the bottom 4.
Yeah, a long way to go there, buddy.
That's the first layer, because like all of these have at least two passes on all the freehand, because of like the way the shading I do with the freehand, with the like the lava pattern on the skin. And so I only had 4 done there. I have like 12 done right now, so I've made some progress on those. And then in between that, I jumped over to my forge and have been doing some of my forge work. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a different project. Obviously, I have more work to do on the runes still, and I have all of my like actual like silver metal left to do on the forge as well. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun project.
No, it's good. Like, keeping terrain to the side or something. I think that's, I've been thinking more about like the 2 project thing, especially if you're working on like a really long project. Like, this big display project I'm working on is like, it is the definition of trying hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's going to easily be 150, 200 hour project of just like constantly thinking you're done and then needing to go back and do more stuff, and thinking you're done and then you need to do more stuff. And you got like, there can be aggressive feedback I'll get that I have to like really go in and do stuff, and I have to be willing to swallow that pill and just go do it, because there is no end to this beyond trying to get it perfect. Or, whatever. There is no perfect, but you know what I mean? Trying to get it, that's the wrong word. Trying to get it as good as can possibly be. That's the right answer.
Sure.
Right. And so the reality is, I think I've always been someone who, like, people have asked me, how do you stay on a project? I don't know what that means. I've never, like, I am a person who can't stop working on something once I start. Like, I have to just finish this one thing. The problem is, on a project of that length, where it's like weeks of work of hours and hours every day, where like, I mean, I worked on that Bloodthirster like 20 hours on Saturday straight. Okay. And there just comes a point where like, you have to have something mindless to go to. Otherwise, you just want to bang your head into the table. And so keeping a second project, which I've always been a fan of, but found it hard to do, but switching to something like terrain or like an endless spell, or, something that's more who cares. Right. I mean, I don't want to be negative about that. I just mean, it doesn't matter. It's not for anything except fun. It's just a funsies piece. That makes it less intense. So yeah,
definitely.
So there you go. I'll share more of that stuff. I promise I will share the piece once it's done, or done-ish. I'll probably still continue to futz with it for a while, but we'll see. It'll be a couple weeks. There you go.
Totally.
All right. So do we want to move to our feature segment this week?
Sure.
All right. So I thought it would be fun, since you mentioned everybody doing like their pre-new GHB tiers, right? You talked about that. And we could do that too, but whatever. The reality is that's already well covered ground, right?
Yep.
There's lots of people who are doing tiers. I thought Honest Wargamer Rob did a real nice breakdown on Monday. He had everything in the various rankings, establishing the new tier, trash tier. So sorry
The
if your
bin tier.
army ended.
Sorry, it's in the bin.
It's in the bin. Sorry if your army ended up in the trash tier, but it's going to happen. It happens sometimes. But I thought it would be more fun for you and I to just kind of talk back through the past year-ish. We can do year plus-ish of playing Warhammer and some of the fun memories we had from games we've played over the history of like this GHB and its sort of immediate predecessor, right?
Yeah.
Because things will change a lot. Like every GHB has brought with it an actual, like a pretty big amount of change. Obviously last year was a really big change because it also was the herald of AoS 2, right? Like that all dropped at the same time.
Each GHB has been transformative in nature.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would call it. 100% I agree. And not just because of the points, but because of, the new missions or whatever, right? The new allegiances, like 16 gave us points for the first time, 17 gave us all these new allegiances, 18 came out with AoS 2, and now 19 is clearly trying to stack on completely new types of games, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't talk about Death in the Streets, but I'm pretty interested to see what those Death in the Streets rules look like.
Yeah.
Because I hear Death in the Streets, and I'm like, oh,
more time.
More time? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, like I've printed out, I'm on like building 9 or something like that of like ruined printable terrain. Like I will have a ruined city when this is done. Like that's the plan. I will be able to fill up a 6x4 ruined city board.
Nice. Oh, one thing I wanted to announce from the news that I couldn't because my internet was crapola. But I wanted to say that there is the first, so Origins Game Fair happens in Columbus in my hometown. It happens this weekend. And there is actually an AoS tournament at it for the first time.
What?
They got some space. Yeah, it's only a one-day event, but it's happening. And I'll post the details for it. If you're anywhere in Ohio or near Columbus and you want to come down to Origins for a fun one day, they reached out and asked me to talk about it. I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. I apologize that my internet was total crap. I'll share the link and everything down below. Sadly, I can't go because
is it standard 2K rules?
I'll share everything for all the rules out there. I'll drop it out. Yeah. So there you go. So there's and obviously they're hoping to grow it. This is the first year. They were only able to get a day because they, space is in high demand and all that, but they're hoping to grow it over time. So if you're on, if you're anywhere near Columbus, Ohio, and you want to come down and support that scene, check it out. So there you go.
Was this like a last minute thing?
Yeah, it was actually. They weren't able, like, sort of very. Origins is pretty famous for giving out space kind of at the last minute. It's not a new thing. It happened to some other people I know a couple years back. But yes, like they reached out about a week and a half ago. So there you go.
Got it. Oh, that's interesting.
So, all right. Anyway, so instead, if you're like me and you grew up in the 80s and 90s, then you remember when sitcoms ran out of steam. Okay, go ahead.
Stop. No, there's another event here in Cincinnati the first week of October, like 7th and 8th maybe. It'll be a 2-day GT 36-person sign up, and they're hoping to grow it as well. So I wanted to spruik that as well. It's like the Cincinnati like gaming con or something. So we'll have a link to that below as well. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll drop it. We really just need to add an events section to the news separately. Like we should just make that part of the formal agenda where we talk through events. In fact, let's just do that since we own the agenda and no one else does. So from now on, we'll just have a formal events section after the news before the pick of the week. Done and done. There you go. Solved it. Did it. Okay. So if you have events you'd like us to talk about, send them in. There's an email down there. You can see it. It's right down there below. You can send it there and we'll drop it in. Solve that problem we should have solved a year ago. All right. Anyway, so as I was saying, if you're like me and you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you knew that sometimes sitcom writers, they just couldn't be bothered to come up with a new plot, right? Like making 23 episodes of a show is real hard. So once a season, you get all the Golden Girls and they sit around the table in the kitchen and they think back and do memories of their past year, right? And it's the clip show. And I thought about that and I was like, great, that's what we're doing this week. Since we're in this holding pattern until the new GHB comes out, it's time for a clip show. So Tom and I are going to talk about some of our positive Warhammer memories from the past GHB. So there you go. Sound good, Tom?
Yeah, sounds delightful.
Okay. So clip show begin. I have a fun story I want to share from this GHB.
Okay. Yep.
So this GHB brought a whole new life to Slaanesh, even before the book, right?
Sure.
Because it added in, with AoS 2 and with that GHB, it added in summoning. And so depravity points, right, were introduced in GHB 18, right? And so very early on, after we got that book, and we had the new method of summoning for Blood Tithe. This is pre the Corn book, obviously. This is, last summer, right? And depravity. We played a big, giant 4-player scrum, like 4-player individual game. And I was running my Slaanesh demons, and there was an opponent on the other side running Corn. And what's amazing about this is when there's 4 players, there's so much more to kill, right? Like, think about how many units that makes, right? And so each of us were just like, his Blood Tithe was just because units die everywhere in this massive 4-player insanity. And I had the pick of the litter as far as like multi-wound models to hit into, because there was just so much on the table.
Sure.
And so it was the most insane game ever. Like, one of the players got kind of smashed off real quick, because that sometimes happens in 4-player Chaos Ball, and didn't have much left. And then there was a death player who just kind of sat there while the Corn player and I summoned our entire army over and over again back onto the board, and just kept fighting, because he had this outrageous amount of Blood Tithe and I was just building depravity. And we each summoned 3 greater demons back to the table.
So like what we like to call the Blood War.
Yeah, it was the Blood War. It was like Wrath and Rapture before it happened. The Death player just sat back and smartly won the game. Like, they started actually playing for the objectives that we were playing for. So they ultimately won with very few casualties, really. They lost all their chaff units, which just fed more Blood Tithe and stuff. Their dire wolves were just depravity for me and Blood Tithe for the Corn player. And the Corn player was certainly still inclined to let me go wipe out a unit of dogs, right? He doesn't care, because it's a Blood Tithe for him and 5 depravity for me. And so it just was this nonsense game of summoning where we were both just matching each other back and forth with heroes and greater demons and everything just dropping out. And it was hilarious, because by the end of the game, we had both lost terribly and had more fun than I've ever had playing that Slaanesh army since AoS started, because it was just like, one greater demon's dead, here comes another one, boom, here they're rolling out, baby. It was especially good since the Corn player had for some reason brought cogs. So he had a cogs up set to a faster time, right? So or whatever.
So everybody had 7-inch charges on drop.
Exactly.
In this, boys and girls, is why summoning is broken. No.
I mean, it was a different kind of summoning, right?
Indeed.
But it's different now. But I really some people might smart at that or something. I mean, obviously we summoned way more than you ever would, again, because 4 players on the table, right? When you multiply out that number of points, that number of multi-wound models, that number of units to die and feed Blood Tithe, it's not like a standard game. But I will say it was just outrageous fun. And I advocate for Chaos Ball a lot, like people playing 3 or 4 player games, because they are really fun. And it's not like there's any pressure. No one had feel bads. It was just a great time. So that's one of my initial early happy memories from this one. That was a great game. It was one of the most fun games I've lost.
I got one for you. So right after AoS came out, this edition came out, we had the new models, and I was coming up for, let's say, for D&D marathon, summer marathon last year.
Oh, I know where this is going.
And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna play some Stormcast. Stormcast sound like fun. It's all the new stuff, and that game had a number of highlights. Probably my favorite moment was when 10 Sequitors stood against the might of the Ever Chosen himself, of the Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse. And after a couple turns of fighting, lost one Sequitor and he ran away.
No, I didn't even kill a Sequitor. You're giving me too much credit there, Tom. 0 Sequitors died. Okay? I almost killed one, but you saved him with that, like, prevent a wound thing that they can do, remember? Because you were about to pull the model, and you were like, oh, wait, I have this thing where I can prevent him from
The Lord
taking
Arcanum, yeah.
Yeah. Like, this was, Tom came up to play in a D&D marathon, and yeah, he had 10 Sequitors buffed with a Lord Castellan Lantern, and, you know, their reroll saves on. And I put Archeon into him because I was running, what was I running?
And then, like, to be fair, no, yeah, that was it. I would say they didn't have Stalwart Defender because I was running the Hallowed Knights.
I know what I was running. I was running Archeon-led Skaven. That's what I was running.
A bunch of rats.
Yeah, because that was the time when Archeon could make all their command abilities fire off, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, you came up and I charged Archeon into those 10 Sequitors, and I was like, well, the Lord of the Apocalypse against a double strength battle line unit, because the Sequitors had just come out, right? We hadn't really this has got to be like a week after the box came out, right?
Yeah.
It was right
Something
there.
Like that. Yep.
And yeah, because it was like the week after I got back from the AoS Open Day, where or whatever.
I had warned you when we reviewed Scrolls that they were good.
Archeon fought 10 Sequitors for 3 combats, did a wound, and then left. He was just like, nah.
Well, and he took like 3 or 4 wounds. Like he had taken damage too.
Yeah. He had taken damage, no doubt. Because I mean, he was on like a 3-up rerolling 1s or whatever with a Mystic Shield, but still, wounds got through, right?
Right.
He took more wounds than they did. That's what's relevant. The Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse. Of course, I never rolled like 2 6s to slay a model. Like that didn't happen. So yeah, that was super great.
And then to top it off, Archeon, in his attempt to stick it to me, tried to Arcane Bolt my Gryph-hound, and my Hallowed Knights 6-up resisted the spell. As if the humiliation needed to be complete.
Well, it was even better because if you remember, like the Gryph-hound had 2 wounds left, and I had actually rolled the 9 or 10 plus or whatever for the D3.
Oh, D3. Bolt. Yep.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get that dog. I was like, good percentage chance, like get that stupid dog. And you roll and you're like 6-up. Nope, there you go. Like Archeon was just, he did nothing. Oh boy, do we need that Ever Chosen Slaves to Darkness book so very badly.
So fantastic. There you go.
Yeah. All right,
there's a memory from the year.
I like that one. That was a good game. That was a very good game. It was a lot of fun. Okay. So this was also a year where I was playing a lot of Iron Jaws, right? Up until sort of post that, like just post that time, up until basically my daughter's army got, ready to go, right? And so I had been challenged by Jacob at NashCon last year with my Iron Jaws.
Sure.
And he was playing Sylvaneth, and the showdown was about him, me, lambasting Alariel for being a fake goddess, right? That she's a weak, not real goddess. So he grudged me, and I said, look, my only goal here is to kill Alariel. Like, that's what I'm on about in this game. I openly said, I'm not trying to win this game. I'm trying to kill Alariel. Like, I'm not playing for the objectives. I'm going to play this game wrong. I don't care that we're in a tournament. I'm here for the narrative. Let's do this. Which is a really great choice, game one, by the way. So he then proceeds, knowing that that's what I'm on about, he then proceeds to bubble wrap Alariel with his entire Sylvaneth force. Like, he has 2 rows of Dryads, then Kurnoths, and then Draika on one side and like a Tree Lord Ancient or whatever the build was, right? Yep. On the other side, and then Alariel. So she is like castled so deep in here, and I was like, weak, get her out here. So I had to like play super cagey and eventually managed to like, I worked it around, and at my turn in turn 2, I managed to get in, hit. I charged Draika on like a 10-inch charge. Okay, like I had to long bomb her. Yep. And then Tokyo drift around her to go attack, and like I could just reach into the edge to go attack Alariel. And then I was like, yes. So it took all this work. Like, I had to go in, free stuff up, like just really go to town, and then finally I attacked her and completely fluffed the rolls and missed and did like 8 wounds to her, and then she was fine and healed herself, and then she killed me with the mortal wound spell that turns you into a forest. So after all of that grudge, my Mega Boss on Maw Crusher became a tree stand, literally in the middle of the board.
Oh, it's so offensive. It's just so humiliating.
Wasn't great. All right, what else you got, Tom?
I'm trying to think through. So I just had a story and I blanked on it. Let me pull.
You should tell something from Holy Havoc.
Where to start?
How about, Tom, the game where you and I teamed up this last year for Holy Havoc again? You know?
Yep.
So how about the game, Tom, where we were playing a very nice couple? I don't remember their name, but it was a husband and wife or whatever, right? And it was like her first tournament, okay? And we were running our ridiculous Daughters of Cain beatdown list. Yeah, just this awful team list that was gross, because you had like the power of Hagnar being supported by the bubble wrap and teleporting of Calibron, right?
Right.
And you had like big packs of 30 witches that had all my teleporting stuff surrounding you. So I could just like bubble wrap you and then just literally teleport my stuff out of the way to let you go charge. All of the horrendous things that should never happen. And so, you're like plowing your witches into their force. And like, it's obvious they're mind razored, they're catechismed,
not only mind razored, let's be clear. There's also a grave tide that's been jammed up the skeletons to crack their bravery underneath my modified bravery. So it's a mind razor with double damage. Yes, indeed.
Right. So you were as buffed as could be. And like, you were literally about to kill most of their army, right? Like, almost their entire army had been engaged by your 30 witch elves. And it was obvious you were going to blow them up. Okay?
Yep.
And because, that's what hyper buffed witches do. You were already in the turn where you had catechism, you were re-rolling all hits, re-rolling all wounds, neg 1 ren 2 damage each, right?
Right.
The nightmare scenario of Daughters of Cain. And the one player had like 5 blood knights that were off to the side, right? They're kind of like way off here. It's like the only unit they had that wasn't engaged and about to explode. And then you had a choice. You could either like also string out your charge and tag this other unit, knowing you wouldn't kill them all. I mean, just because it would only be like one witch touching them. Witches are scary, but they're not going to do 15. One isn't going to do 15 wounds, right?
Sure.
Especially because the Blood Knights were still like leadership 10 or whatever.
Yep.
And so, you knew maybe you'd bring down one of them, but the point is you'd rob them of their charge and pin them in place, and then all they could do was retreat. And I was like, I leaned over to you and I was like, don't do it, man. Come on, we're already going to win this like overwhelmingly. And you're like, nope, no mercy. Just like Cobra Kaiing this new person. Just like, I'm going to also charge here. And you locked up their only unit. And then, I was like, that's
not the worst part.
Tom.
That's not the worst. I went through a building. I don't know if you remember that. Yes. And I pulled them in through the wall. So they couldn't actually, like, there was no way for them to actually engage my unit.
Only one could actually fight you, yeah. There was one that could fight you, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody else was stuck because you had fought the one Blood Knight in a doorway. And so, like, literally the rest couldn't pile in anywhere through the wall to get you, yes. Yeah, I remember that. You're a terrible person. You're a terrible person.
Yeah, I remember that story. That was good. That's a good story.
There you go. Yeah, that's
I like that story. Thanks for sharing my story, Vince. Do you have any stories?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Sure.
Yeah, how about our matchup against Jake and Sean? So one of the things that I loved about Havoc this year is that
we played on one table the whole time.
No, that's not true. We went and cut down.
We played on one table 4 out of the 5 games.
Yes, exactly. The first game somebody took it, and then after that we only played on that table. Because the way that Steve did it was that people would choose like where they wanted to fight, and then you would choose your matchup.
Yeah, you could either choose a table or a matchup depending on where you were in the random draw. Right.
And so it was just a very interesting format that is not normal, because basically you can grudge people every round functionally. Like that's that's essentially what it's doing. And what I loved is that Steve posted the scoring, like the rankings going into day 2, so that anybody that actually wanted to win had to headhunt the other top armies. Which
we've talked about this before. Like I've talked about this in a smaller, I think this is great for a smaller tournament as a format.
Yeah.
Because, people think, you could just go punch down, but that's effectively not what happens. Like the way it works out is that all the strongest players who wanted to win went and hunted the other strong people to try to knock them down. Because if they beat up somebody who was sort of lower ranked and didn't get the big win and the other person did, then they lost. They just had handed over the game, right? The only way to ensure your victory was to go beat the other top score people. And so as a result, yes, Jake and Sean came hunting after us with their undead nonsense.
Their dual undead monstrosity list.
It was a gross list.
It was a gross list. Vince, you want to talk about that 9-inch charge?
Sure. So they had a zombie dragon with the ethereal amulet. Right.
And I was like, go fix that. I can't deal with that. Go remove
we knew
that
it was
threat.
A problem.
Yeah.
And so I was like, look, we're going to win this game the same way we win all our games. We're going to just roll 9s. So I calibroned a big unit of the Snake Sisters, the Blood Sisters. Yeah. Over behind, 9 inches away. Like he had left just enough space for me to get him back there behind his line. And I was like, that's it. I had no hero over there. So I had to roll a hot 9. I was like, drop this or we're done. Because there's no, again.
And they were like super souped up. Like they had Catechism of Murder and they had bonus attacks from the temple. Had given them like 3 extra attacks or some ridiculous number of attacks.
The key here is that to understand this board, there's this weird temple in the middle of the board that like broadcasts this aura of bonus attacks when more blood was spilled to Cain. And so at this point, it was giving +2 bonus attacks to all of your profile, to everyone's profile in a massive range.
To everybody on the board, basically.
Yeah. And so that's like that. It just makes the board an utter bloodbath. But what it means is that the Blood Sisters with their Crystal Touch, where they normally have 1 Crystal Touch dealing mortal wounds, when you make 3 Crystal Touch attacks per snake, that's pretty scary. Even to some, like the Ethereal Amulet is suddenly not going to be good enough. And So I dropped the charge, rolled the 10, got him in on one try, and then got him onto the screws. I mean, like between his death saves and like everything that he had,
Yep.
I did
Yep.
exactly the number of wounds I needed to do to kill that thing. And if I had missed it by one, he would have been fine, because then he would have immediately drank his potion and done everything else to heal back up. So yeah, that was what we call pure luck in action. Yeah.
Yep. Other honorable mentions. In the final game, we played some of the. So that was game 4. Game 5 of that event, we played some of the other guys from Detroit. And I'm blanking on their names because I'm a terrible person. And it was a filthy like Nurgle / Zinch team up with Enlightened, which were terrifying, and Plague Monks, which were also terrifying even before the book. And I remember getting like 8 witches through on the Plague Monks, on the 40-some Plague Monks. But because of the buffs and because of the everything, like the witches just barely touched that unit, and it like evaporated down to like 3 models.
No, I'm pretty sure you killed 40 Plague Monks with 6 Witch Elves with all the bonus attacks.
What was that?
Because again, at that point you were up to like 3 bonus attacks. Every Witch Elf made like 6 or 7 attacks. It was ridiculous.
And they're all double damage.
Again, now to be fair, if the Plague Monks had ever gotten to swing, they would have been on like the same insane number.
Yeah, they would have
right?
evaporated. Yeah. Yep.
Sure. It would have been. It was mutually assured destruction, right? Because it was that board made everything just death incarnate, because it just rocketed the attacks up to Insanoville. Yeah.
So that was a great event.
Yeah, it was good.
Highlight and finally was able to take best general at that event, like in the teams event. So we had chased it at our first one a couple years prior, and only placed second against Sean and Stephen Thompson. So finally, that was good. Felt good. Take that trophy.
Sure. You didn't get to Holy Wars with me this year, but that was a really, really fun tournament. You missed out. And it was notable for a couple reasons for me. It was the first time I got to see Skaven in action, though I didn't get to play him. I did get to play Gristlegore that time. That book had just come out, and I got to play Gristlegore with my tissue paper daughter's army. Not Agnar, not any of that. Like I was Calibron and had no 30 Witch Elves. I had a 10 and a 10 of Sisters of Slaughter, which Gristlegore was a real fun matchup. But that was a really good game. Managed to fight it to a draw. That was a lot of fun. I played Gloomspite Gitz for the first time, which was awesome. Played our buddy Tom McClure, who was super awesome. He played an all Trog army, so I got to play all the Trogs. And that was a super fun matchup because Trogs are always fun to fight against. It was just a great tournament. I got to play Martin Orlando there, game 1. I'd never actually played him before. Mr. Good Painted Stormcast man. And that was a really interesting game where everything that could possibly go wrong for me went wrong. And, there it was. But it was a fun game top to bottom. So I had like the greatest opening move to a game ever and then proceeded to fail everything else for the rest of the game. But that's all right. It was fun. There you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Jack also reminded us that board also had a 6-inch or 12-inch shooting restriction. Yeah, so nobody could shoot us. It was that Temple Cane. Oh, it was a good board. It's a good board to go and just ride your way to victory on. Yeah, when you're playing a bent ass broken list and you're playing on the board that turns your army up to 11. Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, it was good.
No, it was. I mean, all in all, this has been a really, really great year. Like all the tournaments I've attended, I've really enjoyed. I haven't had a bad tournament game. I don't really think I've had a bad any game this year. Even playing Gristlegore the first time was a lot of fun. That army in general, it's a challenging experience. I wouldn't want to do it all the time. I would rather it be fixed. You know what I mean? But it's fun every so often as an interesting experiment. It's a lot easier when you have Marathi, who's a really good counter to that. You know what I mean? And most of the times I've fought it, I've had Marathi. Yeah. So I don't feel the pain as badly when you can just transform, when you can Hulk out Marathi and go get that thing, you know. But it's like it's been a year where felt like unbelievably lucky because I got to get my Skaven back out with the Skaven book, and I haven't played the Warp Lightning Vortex once, not even once. As I've said, Skaven are like my fun basement game army mostly because I'm not rebasing all of them. They're staying on squares forever. I ain't rebasing all of them, and they're painted like crap, so it is what it is. But they've been unbelievably fun to play. Like I got so many good games in with Skaven where I just tried every wacky list I could imagine, right? And some of them were cool and some of them were utter crap. Like running multi-Doom Wheel lists was just outrageously fun. I haven't had this much fun with Doom Wheel since 8th edition. You know, just stuff like that. And, you know, it's fine. Like I don't mind some of that stuff being adjusted. It well should be. The book is thick with fun and rich options. So I enjoyed the heck out of that. And then I got rewarded with like a great Slaanesh book that's everything I wanted, beautiful new Slaanesh models. And I've loved every single game I've played with Slaanesh thus far. Like since that new book, it's been nothing but good game after good game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had about that same time that like so Gristlegore and all that dropped. I had to like rework my daughter's list. Because again, I had been anti Marathi. Like I didn't want to run Marathi. Just because everybody had run Marathi, and I felt like, you know, like I think there's legs here without running Marathi, and so I wasn't going to run her going into Adepticon. And then Gristlegore dropped, and I felt like I had to run her because of the presence of Gristlegore, and so ended up painting her up, and actually had a pretty good run with her. Like many of my games were carried on the back of Marathi at Adepticon. I
You're
ran
lucky
her.
She's got those broad shoulders.
She does, with big wings. Because I mean, I took her to the 2K or the 1K, and I played like an all-star lineup of the Troy folks and Brennan Melnick and a number of folks in that 1K with running Marathi Calibron. It was not an easy 2K or 1K event, I'll say that. But she just wrecked shop. Like she's just such a powerful piece, especially when she can teleport around the table. And it continued into my 2K games, running her. The fascinating thing though was that I learned a really hard lesson. Like
okay.
I made some hard mistakes in my 2K tournament run this year, particularly in like at the Adepticon 2K. For my first game, I rolled up on an individual, and he was a fan of the show, and we were talking, and he hands me a Nurgle list, and I flip through it, and it's just all the Blight Cyst, you know, Plague Bearers, Guo, with a Corruptor, which I was like, that's kind of weird. Corruptor, sure, whatever, cool. And look at it, and cool. You know, you have any questions?
You didn't recognize the Sword of Judgment on the Corruptor?
No, it didn't have Sword of Judgment. That's what I'm saying. Like, it had just some random like Nurgle artifact, and so I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah.
Oh, did he have Nurgle's nail?
He did. And this is the game where I played the game with 1,500 points.
Sure.
Because
you got
what happened
Nurgle's
is,
nailed.
because I pushed Marathi out on a point, and I was like, she'll be fine out there against that Corruptor. Like it's intentionally matching her with the Corruptor. And so the real stickler here is the fact that when he moved the Corruptor up, but he like placed a tree, but then didn't run, and he didn't run. And then he like rolled his charge and missed the charge by like 1 inch. And I'm like, you know what? Or like 2 inches, or it was 2 inches. And I was like, you know, but you should have ran. And I was like, and I was feeling confident, like looking at that, knowing what my list could do, knowing what my capabilities are, knowing what the outcome was going to be, or feeling like I knew what it was going to be. And so I was like, go ahead and run the roll the run dice. If you don't roll a 1, you'll get in. You know, I don't mind going back and giving you the charge. And so he did. And so like he rolls the dice, he gets in, and then he stops and he pauses and gets quiet. And he says, you did see that I have Nurgle's nail on the corruptor, right? And I said, no, I didn't. I said, what's Nurgle's nail again? And he goes, oh, well, if the corruptor does any damage to its target, if any damage it goes through, you roll 2d6. If you roll a natural 7, it auto kills the model.
Yep, slain.
And I was like, well, but then I'm forced into a conundrum because I gave him this movement, and now he's acknowledged that like, hey, there's this thing, and I had actually missed something. And like, do I take it back? It seems kind of douchey. And so I was like, and I did the math, and I'm like, well, statistically, he's going to get this many. He'll get like 3 or 2 through. I have like a 3 up and a 5, or like a 6 up, or 3 or 4 up and a 6 or 5 up, 6 up. I'll be fine. Narrator, and then he has to roll 2d6. Then the narrator, he was not fine.
Yeah, indeed.
And so at the bottom 1, I took Marathi off the table and proceeded to play the rest of that game with 1,500 points.
I love that you got Marathi Nurgles nailed. That's so wonderful. That's a great memory right there. Like, aren't you glad that worked out that way?
I tabled him in 4.
Sure. No, I understand. I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
great. I'm glad you pulled it back into a win, and it's a good example of just how strong Daughters is. But I also love that that it happened, because it's such a better story that it happened.
Right.
So,
And that's the other thing, is that I knew that even if this does go through, what a great story for him.
Sure.
By the way,
Tom,
I knew.
I apologize,
Yeah.
but we need to call it a short show today.
No,
I do need to go here. I'm sorry. But that's okay. Marathi getting Nurgles nailed is a good story to end on.
Totally.
I can't think of a better way to go. I apologize, everyone, that we have to do a very short show today. Don't worry, we'll be back next week with our normal show, normal length, all of that. But
hopefully, good connections.
Yeah, good connections.
We'll probably have a guest.
It'll happen. We got a good guest lined up for next week, so it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry for the unusual time, the troubles at the beginning of the short show. We always try to do this every week. We have to fight with the internet and travel schedules and stuff like that, but we thank you for watching. Very much appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.